Okay, welcome back to our clay video. In this stage, I am going to show you how to use the rubber block and how to transfer that into the clay to create a set of coasters. So to begin with, I've got my block curved. I'm going to go ahead and use my wedged piece of clay, and I'm going to start rolling that out. So I have my canvas. By the way, a coaster is something that you can put your cups on at home to keep your furniture protected so that your coffee or beverages do not leave any liquid on your tabletops. So, first thing I'll do is kind of get my ball of clay into a squarish shape because I want to try to get as many squares cut out of this clay as possible. I'm hoping to get 4. We'll see what happens. Next, I press down evenly with my hands, making sure not to make any of the clay thicker than my pinky. By flipping it over, it takes out extra moisture. I'm going to continue to roll. If I see any air bubbles, I'm going to pop those along the way. Maybe I didn't wedge as well as I was hoping. I do have some air bubbles. I'm noticing that I like to make my clay tall enough to have at least 2 tiles or coasters cut out of it. So making it long enough, making sure not to roll on the very, very edge of the clay. I want to make sure that it's pinky height all the way around. Starting in the middle, I roll outward, and then I roll towards myself. Roll outward to the corner, and then roll it towards myself. Trying to even it out. And then the next step is to grab a rib tool and some water, and I'm going to go ahead and strengthen my clay by ribbing the tool with a rib tool to make it smoother and to compress the clay to make the clay stronger. Just give me a minute while I grab my rib tool. Okay, so you can either spray water on or add it with your hand and then begin going across the clay with your rib tool, pressing down to compress the clay to make the particles more unified and make it stronger. And again, once I do that, I'll flip my clay over and repeat the process on the other side. Just be careful not to stretch out the clay as you flip it. So once again, I'm going to spray it, smooth it out, and rib it a little bit in order to compress the clay to make it stronger and more dense. Pop any bubbles that you might see along the way. If it looks like a little blister, then most likely there's air trapped there and you need to pop that so it does not damage your project once it goes through the kiln. And then the last step would be to use my hand to give it a really smooth finish. Or you can use a sponge. A sponge is a good way to smooth it out, but it will leave some lines or texture on the clay. If that's fine with you, then just use a sponge. I'm going to do that and then use my hand as well. Your hand really does give you the smoothest surface. Once that's done, I'm going to see how many squares I can actually fit on my circle of clay. Remember, I'm going for a set of 4 coasters. Typically, coasters come in sets of 4. This would make a nice gift if you need a gift for someone. You can make the design something that they like. And you can go ahead and cut your squares out as you go or trace them on first just to be sure that you can fit as many as possible. Looks like I'm going to be able to fit 3, which means afterwards I'll just re-wedge my scraps, roll them out, and make my 4th coaster. Then when I'm done with that, just simply, I'm going to remove my scraps. Oh, looks like I forgot to cut this piece. Remove all the scraps and re-wedge those for later. So next I'm going to go ahead and press my design that I've carved in my rubber block onto clay. So printmaking is something that usually happens in the 2D world, where people create prints and then transfer them to paper. Back in the 1400s, the first printing press was invented by Gutenberg. Johannes Gutenberg was the name of the person that invented it. And why that is so miraculous is because now in the 1400s, people didn't have to write every book by hand anymore. They could just make copies of things and print them. So generally, when you do printmaking, you are printing an image more than once. So in this assignment, you can use your block to make coasters. You can make a plate. I'm noticing that I have some rubber that's stuck into my clay. If you have little bits of rubber in your clay, just throw those scraps in the garbage. It's not worth contaminating all of the clay in the clay bin with pieces of rubber. So just keep that in mind. While it's still on the block of rubber, I'm just going to go ahead and smooth all my edges. That way, I'm not going to do it later, because if I do it later, then I'm going to stretch my clay out. It won't be as precise. So smooth it out real nice, and then go ahead and carve your initials in the back and your class period number. So either periods 1, 2, or 7 with your name. So I got my initials. I'm just pressing in the little pieces of clay that came up when I wrote my initials, because those little pieces will become sharp after it goes through the kiln, and I don't want those to scratch my table surface since these are coasters. Peel it off very gently so you don't destroy the shape of your little tile or coaster. So there you go. There is my first coaster. One more step to kind of refine my edges is to take a wooden board and just press along the sides of my clay tile or coaster to really even that out and make it square again. Because as you push in clay, it expands. So the size of my coaster has gotten larger since I've pressed into it. So I'm just going to refine that and then repeat the process 3 more times to have a set of coasters. So there's my example of my first coaster. An easy way to take it off the cloth is to lift the cloth up and peel it off of the cloth. And when you're done with those, you will hand those in to be fired, and then you'll be able to glaze those when they come back out of the kiln. So that is how to print make on clay to make coasters. My next video will be to show